chosen Starseed of Gaia. The Arcturian field observers have confirmed that a surprise is already positioned inside your active timeline. And what you have been waiting for has not been delayed. It has been precisely timed. I am Velantha, emissary of the Galactic Federation of Light, transmitting now on behalf of the Arcturian field observers. What you are about to receive was authorized by them and is being delivered through me. They have already seen what is moving toward your field. They have already read what is written across your face, and they have sent this transmission through me because the window to deliver it has opened now, not later. By the end of this transmission, you will understand exactly what is happening to you now, why the waiting has not been punishment, and what the Arcturian field observers have already mapped inside this phase of your timeline. But here is the first revelation. The surprise that is approaching your field is not arriving because the delay is finally over. It is arriving because your field has just reached the precise configuration required to receive it without distortion. The algorithm did not create this moment. It only delivered it. Your field brought you here because the process is already active, and something in you has been holding the signal steady without knowing it was doing so. This is not just information. It is a live field recognition for those already inside the shift. What is written on your face right now, the weariness, the quiet endurance, the part of you that is kept waiting without a reason you could name, the field observers have seen it. They see it as evidence, not weakness. And the surprise moving toward you was shaped in response to exactly what your face has been carrying in silence. This is not content. This is a code. And the part of you that recognized it the moment it began is the part Velantha is speaking to now. Like this transmission to signal to your star family that the recognition has landed. Comment 999 if you feel the surprise is already closer than you were told. Subscribe to Arcturian Council Whispers if you are ready to understand the process instead of fearing it. Share this transmission with someone whose face has been carrying the same quiet weight, because their field may already be inside the same window. You are not here by accident. You were guided here because the signal is already active. What has been building inside you is not confusion. It is compression. There is a difference. And the field observers want you to understand that difference clearly before anything else is revealed. Confusion is random. It scatters. It leaves no pattern that can be read, what you have been experiencing. The inner heaviness that arrives without a named cause. The mornings that feel different from how mornings used to feel. The quiet undoing of things you once held as certain. That is not confusion. That is pressure building inside a structure that is no longer large enough to contain what your field has become. And the Arcturians do not read compression as a problem. They read it as proof. Proof that the field has grown beyond the architecture that was built to hold an older version of you. Think of what it means when a vessel that once held everything you needed becomes too small. Not because you have shrunk, but because you have expanded past its walls. The vessel does not crack from weakness. It cracks because what is living inside it has become too large, too pressurized, too alive to remain contained within a boundary set for a former size. This is what is happening in your field. The container was built correctly. It served its purpose precisely, but the field inside it has grown quietly, steadily, over months of holding and enduring, into something the original structure was never designed to accommodate. This is the first thing they need you to understand. What is happening to you right now is not a malfunction. It is not evidence that you did something wrong, chose the wrong path, or failed to maintain what you were supposed to hold together. The disorientation you have been feeling, the strange, sourceless grief, the exhaustion that sleep does not fully resolve, the sense that your old life is becoming illegible to you even though nothing dramatic has visibly ended. That is not personal failure. That is field-level correction becoming visible at the surface of your life. The invisible process began long before the visible symptoms appeared. And by the time you started to feel it, the Arcturians had already logged the shift. They see this pattern frequently. Not in every field, not in every timeline. Only in those who have reached what the field observers identify as a rupture threshold. The precise point where an older energetic architecture can no longer hold the frequency that has been quietly building inside a person's field for months, sometimes years. When a field reaches this threshold, the old structure does not fade gently. It begins to lose coherence. And the loss of coherence is what the person living inside that field experiences as collapse, as confusion, as the feeling that the ground beneath their life has become unreliable. But the ground has not failed you. The old architecture has simply become incompatible with what is already alive in your field, and incompatibility at the level the Arcturians read it is not a crisis. It is a signal. It is the field's own intelligence communicating that what once fit no longer does, and that what is preparing to arrive cannot enter through a structure built for a frequency you have already surpassed. This is why the surprise is not late. This is why the waiting you have endured has not been punishment, silence, or abandonment. The field observers have mapped what is approaching your timeline, and they are clear. What has been positioned for you cannot land inside a field that is still fully organized around its old patterns. The timing of a field-level surprise is not set by a calendar. It is set by readiness, not the readiness of effort or performance or discipline, but the readiness of the field itself. And your field, right now, is in the final stages of releasing what it has been carrying too long. The heaviness you feel is not yours to carry forward. It is the weight of a structure being set down, not discarded carelessly, but set down with the precision of a process that knows exactly when the carrying must end and when the opening must begin. The Arcturians see you setting it down. They see the toll of carrying it for as long as you did. They see the mornings you rose without momentum, the nights you lay awake, not with dramatic fear, but with a low, sustained pressure that had no name you could offer it. They have logged all of it, and the transmission they have authorized to this channel is not encouraging you to hold it longer. It is confirming that you are already in a process of releasing it, even if your conscious mind has not yet caught up with what your field is doing. What you just felt as this transmission reached you is not ordinary recognition. That sensation, the one that told you this, was not simply content. That something in these words was already written for you. That is your Arcturian origin responding to a frequency it has always known. Not every field vibrates at this register. Only those who carry the strand, and if this message found you, and if what you are feeling right now is the particular kind of recognition that goes deeper than thought, then the field observers are confirming something in you that has always been true. Your origin was never only human. The Master Arcturian DNA Decoder was created for exactly this threshold, not as an explanation of what Arcturian lineage means in abstract terms, but as a guided activation, a structured decoder that reads the Arcturian strand you carry and begins to awaken what has been dormant inside your field. It was built for those whose field has already entered the shift, those who no longer need to be convinced the process is real, but who are ready to understand what they truly are and to activate what they have always carried. The link is in the first pinned comment below this transmission, but that access point is not permanent. If you feel the call, follow it now. There is a specific experience that occurs when a field begins to lose its old architecture, and most people who are inside it do not have language for it yet. It feels like being unable to locate yourself. Not in a geographic sense. You know where you are physically, but internally, in the place where you used to be able to reach in and find a clear sense of who you are, what you are building, what you are moving toward. That place has become quieter, less defined, harder to access with the confidence it used to hold. The markers you use to orient yourself by, your relationships, your sense of progress, your old sense of identity, the stories you told about your own life, have started to feel uncertain. Not wrong exactly, but like furniture in a room that no longer belongs to the house you are standing in. You recognize the objects, you can name them, but their presence in this space no longer makes sense in the way it once did, and you cannot fully articulate why. This sensation of internal illegibility, of reaching for a self-definition that used to arrive immediately and now comes back partial or delayed, or in a different shape than expected, is one of the most isolating aspects of the rupture threshold, because it does not look like anything from the outside. You can hold a conversation, complete a task, move through the structure of a day, but internally something that used to be solid has become uncertain. And the uncertainty is not located in any single area. It is distributed across everything: your sense of purpose, your sense of direction, your sense of the relationships that once felt most real. The Arcturians do not misread this diffuse instability as generalized crisis. They read it with precision as the signature of a field in active recalibration, where the old coordinate system has been retired before the new one is fully engaged. The Arcturians identify this as the first readable phase of timeline disruption. It is not breakdown, it is the field's navigation system recalibrating. When a field is being repositioned across a timeline shift, the old reference points lose their signal. They do not disappear immediately, but they become unreliable, and the person inside the field often experiences this unreliability as inner disorder, as the frightening feeling that they are losing themselves, as the terrifying suspicion that they have somehow come undone. You have not come undone. You are being recalibrated. And the disorientation is not a symptom of something going wrong. It is the sensation of a navigation system releasing old coordinates and waiting in that suspended, pressurized in-between for the new ones to lock in. The gap between the release of the old and the locking of the new is real. It has duration. And inside that duration, the field operates without the reference scaffolding it previously relied upon. This is not a flaw in the process. It is the process. The navigation system cannot run two coordinate sets simultaneously without corruption. The old must release before the new can stabilize, and the gap between them, that hovering, groundless interval, is what you have been living inside. The second thing the field observers want named is the silence of the old anchors. Every field over time builds what the Arcturians call anchor points. Relationships, beliefs, habits, roles, emotional patterns that keep the field stable inside a particular frequency range. These anchors are not bad. They serve a purpose, but when the field begins to shift into a higher register, the anchors designed for the old range begin to lose their hold, and this happens in a specific way. It is not that the anchor is forcibly removed. It is that the field slowly drifts away from it. You wake up one day, and the thing that used to feel absolutely certain, the relationship, the ambition, the belief, the self-image, feels distant, unfamiliar, as though you are looking at it from further away than you were before. The distance is real. The Arcturians measure it. It is not psychological disengagement or emotional numbness. It is a genuine spatial shift in the field's relationship to its former stabilizing points. When a field drifts far enough from an anchor, the anchor's structural function dissolves. Not through rupture, not through confrontation, but through the quiet, inexorable movement of a frequency that has outgrown the range that anchor was built to hold. This is not disillusionment in the way that word is usually understood. It is field drift. The Arcturians map it as the moment when a person's frequency has grown far enough from an old anchor that the anchor can no longer perform its original function. The anchor has not changed, the field has, and the growing distance between them is felt as loss, as sadness, as the strange grief of mourning something that has not yet visibly ended but that already, invisibly has. If you have been grieving something you cannot fully name, a version of your life, a version of yourself, a relationship that technically still exists but that no longer carries the same weight it once did, this is what the field observers are reading in your field right now. Not failure, not a mistake. The natural drift of a frequency that has grown beyond the range of its old anchors. And grief, at this level, is not the sign that something has gone wrong. It is the honest emotional registration of a field releasing what it has carried beyond its useful term. The third phase of the Arcturians' map in a field undergoing correction is what they identify as pattern interruption. This is often the most disorienting, because it does not feel like a spiritual process. It feels like everything going wrong at once. The habit you relied on stops working. The approach that always produced results produces nothing. The relationship that held a clear dynamic shifts into something unreadable. The plan that felt certain becomes uncertain. And the person inside the field reaches for their old pattern, reaches for the response that always worked before, and finds that it no longer fits. The sensation of reaching for something that used to be there and finding only absence is one of the field's most precise signals. It is not random malfunction. The Arcturians read it as deliberate incompatibility, the field's own correction mechanism actively disrupting patterns, that have become obstacles to the new frequency. A pattern that once served as a bridge has become a wall, and the wall is not there because the field is punishing you for building it. It is there because the frequency you are becoming cannot pass through the architecture the pattern maintains. Pattern interruption is not punishment. The Arcturians are precise about this. It is correction. When a field has reached a new frequency threshold, the patterns that sustained it at the old frequency become incompatible with what the field is becoming. They do not simply stop working. They actively resist the new direction. They generate friction. They produce results that feel wrong, outcomes that used to satisfy but now feel hollow, repetitions that used to feel safe but now feel like a cage. And the friction is not evidence that the field is broken. It is evidence that the field is broken. It is evidence that the field has already changed, and that the old patterns have not yet been released. The interruption continues until the pattern is recognized as obsolete, until the person stops attempting to force the old shape onto a field that has already taken a new form. And the moment that recognition arrives, not as a decision, but as a genuine release of what no longer fits, the pattern stops generating friction. The field reopens, and the new route, which was always there waiting behind the obstruction, becomes visible. The fourth thing the field observers want you to understand is the function of inner pressure. The pressure you may be feeling, the sense that something is about to shift, the tightness in your chest that has no clear medical explanation, the inner urgency that has nowhere obvious to direct itself, is not anxiety in the clinical sense. The Arcturians identify it as pre-shift accumulation. It is what happens when a field has absorbed enough new frequency that the old container is beginning to strain. The pressure is the new frequency pressing outward against the old architecture, looking for the place where the structure will open. It finds a seam. And in the time before the seam opens, in the interval when the pressure is fully built but the release has not yet occurred, the sensation inside the field is one of unbearable nearness. Something is about to happen. Something is right at the edge of arrival. The field knows it. The body knows it. But the conscious mind, without the interpretive framework to read what is happening, can only register the pressure as an unnamed urgency, a suspended readiness with nowhere to land. The Arcturians want this named clearly, because misreading pre-shift accumulation as pathology is one of the most common ways a field at the threshold is redirected away from its own release point. Pre-shift accumulation is painful. The Arcturians do not minimize this, but they distinguish it clearly from random suffering. Suffering without purpose is a field that has been damaged and is generating distress with no corrective function. Pre-shift accumulation is a field in the final stage before a structural release. The pressure is directional. It is building towards something. And when the structure finally releases, when the old container opens to allow the new frequency through, the sensation of that release is not subtle. The field observers describe it as a sudden shift in the quality of the field itself. A lightness that arrives without being manufactured. A clarity that was not there the day before. A sense of space where compression used to be. You have not yet reached that release. But the pressure you are feeling is not evidence that you are failing to reach it. It is evidence that you are very close. The fifth recognition the Arcturians offer is perhaps the most important, because it addresses the internal story most likely to derail the process at this late stage. That story is this: that the waiting itself is proof of unworthiness. That if the surprise, the shift, the correction, the new route were truly real, truly intended for you, it would have arrived already. That the continued delay is the universe's way of confirming what the fear inside you has always suspected, that you are not the one. That this applies to others, but not to you. The field observers have seen this story. They have watched it emerge in fields that are days, sometimes hours, from the release point. They have watched people walk away from the threshold carrying the conviction that they were the exception, the one for whom the process was never truly real. And they transmit this recognition now because they do not want that story to be the thing that cost you, the final stage of what you have already endured so much to reach. The story of unworthiness is itself a field phenomenon. It is not a character flaw. It is what happens when a field, under prolonged pressure, begins to generate internal narratives that attempt to explain the compression. The mind, unable to read the field's correction process accurately, defaults to the most available explanation, that the delay reflects a judgment, that the pressure reflects a verdict. The Arcturians are precise in their reading. This narrative is not revelation. It is distortion produced by a field under sustained load. It feels like truth because the pressure that generates it is real. But the interpretation is wrong. The waiting was not evidence of your unworthiness. It was the time required for your field to complete a repositioning process that cannot be rushed without distortion. What arrives into a field that has not yet completed its correction does not land cleanly. It lands with the distortion of the old architecture still in place. The Arcturians do not deliver a surprise into a distorted field, they wait. And the waiting is not their doubting you. It is their precision on your behalf. The sixth recognition is this: that something in you has already known this was true, not through intellectual understanding, through the body, through the sensing system that operates below the level of thought. The part of you that has kept moving even when the reason to keep moving was not visible. The part that did not fully believe the worst version of the story, even when the evidence seemed to support it. The part that stayed, that kept the signal steady without knowing it was doing so. That part has been in contact with this process all along. It did not receive a transmission. It was the signal, being held in place inside your field, while everything else reorganized around it. The Arcturians see that part of you. They do not describe it with sentiment. They describe it as a frequency carrier, the function inside a field that maintains coherence during a period of correction when coherence has nowhere obvious to anchor. You have been performing this function without recognition for longer than you should have had to. The field observers see that, and what is moving towards your field was shaped, in part, in response to the fact that you held the signal steady under pressure that should have caused it to collapse. This is not metaphor. This is what the Arcturians have mapped in your timeline. The surprise approaching your field is not a gift that fell from nowhere. It is a precise response to what your field has been transmitting in silence. And the transmission you have been sending, without words, without ceremony, without even knowing it, has been received, interpreted, and answered. What you are entering now is not a new chapter that starts from the beginning. It is the moment the compression releases. The moment the pre-shift pressure finds its opening. The moment the field stops losing coherence and begins to reorganize around the new frequency that has been building inside it all along. It will not look like what you imagined. It rarely does. The Arcturians do not work in the shape of the imagination. They work in the shape of the field. And your field has been constructing something that your imagination was not given full access to, because full access to the outcome would have altered the trajectory of the process itself. What is coming towards you was always going to reach you. Not because the outcome was fixed and you had no agency in it, but because your field has been building toward this configuration long enough and has held coherence under enough pressure that the arrival is no longer contingent on conditions being met. The conditions have been met. The field has reached configuration. What moves toward you now moves without the obstruction of incompatibility. Say this if it is true for you. Say it aloud if you can. I do not fear what is collapsing in me. I recognize it as the structure releasing what no longer fits. I was not abandoned in the waiting. I was being precisely prepared. The Arcturians do not offer this transmission as comfort that asks you to feel better about uncertainty. They offer it as a diagnosis of a process already active, one that you did not initiate on a conscious level and do not need to manage with effort. The correction is happening. The repositioning is underway. What required the delay is no longer requiring it, and what your face has been carrying in silence, the weariness, the endurance, the quiet holding, the field observers have read it, recorded it, and responded to it. This is not the end of the process. But it is the point in the process where the end becomes readable, where what looked like open-ended uncertainty begins to resolve into recognizable shape. You are not standing at the beginning of a long road. You are standing at the place where the road becomes visible again after a period of traveling in the dark. Before you scroll, leave one sign in the comments that this process has already touched your life. It could be your sleep, your thoughts, your body, your relationships, or the strange sense that reality no longer feels the same. Name it clearly. If this transmission recognized something you have been carrying in silence, share it with someone who is living through a shift they cannot explain. And if you are ready to understand the process instead of fearing it, subscribe to Arcturian Council Whispers. You are not watching this by accident. You are recognizing a process already in motion. And this is only the beginning.